The morning I overheard them planning my future, I was already awake. That is the part they never accounted for. They assumed I slept until 7, the way I always pretended to, the way it suited everyone for me to shuffle into the kitchen after the coffee was made and the conversation was already over. But that particular Tuesday, the third Tuesday in October, I had been awake since 5. Not from worry. Not from the aching joints that come with 72 years of living. I was awake because the house made a sound I recognized, the specific creak of the third floorboard in the hallway, the one that only ever announced one thing. My son moving quietly, the way he moved when he believed the house was his. I lay still in the guest room. That is what they called it now. The guest room. It had been the master bedroom for 31 years, the room where Gerald and I had talked through every important decision we ever made, lying side by side in the dark. But 6 months after Gerald passed, Michael and his wife had suggested, very gently, that I might prefer the smaller room at the back. More cozy, Renata said. Less to heat in the winter. And I had said yes, because I was still carrying grief like a stone in my chest and the old bedroom felt too large, too full of a man who was no longer in it. I said yes. I moved into the guest room. I did not realize, then, that you should never give ground you intend to reclaim. From the guest room, I could hear everything that happened in the kitchen. This was something they did not know. The house had good bones, old construction, solid walls, but the ductwork ran directly from the kitchen to the back bedroom, and sound traveled through it the way news travels through a small town, clearly, completely, and faster than anyone intended. I heard Michael's voice first. Low and careful, the way it got when he was working something out. Then Renata's, cutting through his like scissors. Then a number. A monthly number. And after that, a name. Heritage Pines Memory Care. I lay there and listened until there was nothing left to hear. Then I folded back the blanket, sat on the edge of the bed, and placed both feet flat on the floor. Gerald always said I had the stillest hands of anyone he knew. He meant it as a compliment, that nothing rattled me, that I processed quietly, that I carried things without flinching. I sat there in the dark with those still hands folded in my lap and I thought about what I was going to do. I was going to do quite a lot, it turned out. But before I tell you what happened that morning, and the mornings after it, I need to tell you who I was before my son decided I was a problem to be solved. If this story is already finding its way under your skin, hit that like button and subscribe to Linda's Life Diaries, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. She always said the ones who stay quiet longest know the most. Let's see if that's true. My name is Helen Barrows. I was born in 1952 in a small town in eastern Ohio where my father ran a hardware store and my mother kept the books. That detail matters more than it might seem. My mother kept the books. She sat at a small desk behind the counter every evening after dinner, adding long columns of numbers in a ledger with a mechanical pencil, and she showed me how to do the same before I was 10 years old. I understood accounting the way some children understand music, not as a skill to be learned, but as a language I was born half knowing. I met Gerald Barrows when we were both 23. He was working for a small commercial lending firm in Columbus, and I was at an accounting practice nearby. We met at a lunch counter, argued cheerfully about the prime rate for 45 minutes, and were married 18 months later. People who knew us then said we were impractical romantics. People who knew us later understood that we were something else entirely, two people who had found the exact right partner for building something real. Gerald was a visionary in the truest sense. He saw potential in property before anyone else did, not flashy investments, not the kind of deals that make the newspaper, but quiet, solid commercial real estate. Small office buildings. Strip plazas. A storage facility on the edge of town. He bought things that looked unremarkable and held them until they weren't, and all the while I handled the accounting, the tenant records, the tax filings, the trust structures. I was the one who made sure the numbers were right. Gerald had the vision. I made sure it held. We raised Michael in the house on Claremont Street, the house that is now technically still mine, though you would not know it from the way Renata rearranges the furniture. Michael was not a difficult child. That is a careful way of saying that he was an easy child in the wrong ways, easy to redirect, easy to placate, easy to convince. He had Gerald's warmth and none of Gerald's stubbornness. Where Gerald would hold a position for hours if he believed in it, Michael would fold within minutes if the person pressing him was confident enough. This is not a criticism. It is simply the truth, and I say it the way I say everything, without venom, with considerable sadness. Michael became a civil engineer. He married Renata Costa when he was 34 and she was 31. She was attractive, ambitious, and very clear about what she wanted. I watched her, at their wedding, moving through the room with a particular kind of purpose, not just celebrating, but cataloging. Who was important, who was not, what this marriage was going to give her access to. I did not dislike her for it. Ambition is not a character flaw. But ambition that operates on incomplete information is dangerous, and Renata had constructed an entire portrait of our family based on a fraction of the picture. What she saw, a retired accountant and her civil engineer husband, a house on Claremont Street, modest income, modest savings. A comfortable but unremarkable life. What she did not see would have changed every calculation she ever made. After Gerald died 3 years ago, I was 69 years old and genuinely shaken. 39 years of marriage leaves a particular kind of wound, not the dramatic, collapsing grief of the movies, but a quieter devastation, the kind that shows up in the second cup of coffee you make without thinking and have to pour out. The phone call you begin to dial before you remember. Gerald had been the only person I talked to freely, and his absence left the house very loud in its silence. Michael suggested, 3 months after the funeral, that he and Renata move in for a while. Just to help. Just until I found my footing. I said yes. I have thought about that decision more times than I can count. Renata was efficient in the way of someone who had decided that the management of a household was a project to be optimized. Within a month of moving in, she had reorganized the kitchen, repainted the hallway a color she called sophisticated grayish, and begun referring to the guest room as your room, Helen, with the particular emphasis that made it clear she considered it a permanent assignment. I let her. I told myself I was being gracious, accommodating the energy of younger people, allowing them space in a house that had become too large for one. These were all true things. They were also convenient ones. The part one did not examine closely enough was this: I was allowing someone to redefine the terms of a space that belonged to me, and each small concession trained her to expect the next one. By the end of the first year, Renata ran the household the way a general manager runs an office, effectively, and without consulting anyone who outranked her. She kept the social calendar. She decided what was made for dinner. She spoke to the neighbors as though she had lived on Claremont Street for decades, and she spoke to me the way someone speaks to a valued fixture, with warmth that required nothing from her and asked nothing of me. She called me Helen. Never Mom, not once in 4 years, though I noticed Michael had begun to soften certain words around me, blunting his sentences the way you blunt a knife before handing it safely to a child. Michael loved me. I do not question that. But loving someone and standing up for them are different skills, and Michael had never developed the second one. The exception was Lily. Lily was Michael's daughter from a brief relationship before Renata, a fact that Renata had integrated into her life with great grace on the surface and somewhat less grace beneath it. Lily was 16, a sophomore in high school, and she lived with us 3 weekends a month and all of summer. She had her father's warmth and something else entirely, something that reminded me of my own mother. A watchfulness. A precision. She noticed things and held them quietly, the way you hold a card you are not ready to play. Lily called me Grandma Hell, a compression she had invented at age 4 and never abandoned. She was the only person in that house who asked how I was and waited for the actual answer. She came to find me one afternoon in early September, about 6 weeks before the morning of Heritage Pines, and stood in the doorway of the guest room with her school bag still on her shoulder. Grandma Hell, she said. Renata's been on the phone with some woman from a facility. I heard her say your name. I looked at her steadily. When was this? Last week. I didn't catch the name of the place. But she mentioned a tour. I nodded. Thank you for telling me. Lily studied me the way teenagers study adults they are trying to calibrate. You're not surprised. I'm not. Are you worried? I thought about that honestly. I'm paying attention, I said. That's different from worried. She sat on the edge of the bed beside me and was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you should know that Dad doesn't look happy about it. Whatever it is. He looks the way he looks when he's been talked into something. That was Lily. The precise, specific observation that told you more than a paragraph would. He loves you, she said. He's just not very good at saying no to her. I know, sweetheart. Is there anything I can do? I patted her hand. Keep listening. And when the time comes, I may need you to do something for me. Anything, she said, without hesitation, the way the young still mean it. What I have not told you yet is the other version of my days. There was the version Renata saw, Helen in the kitchen each morning, making oatmeal, reading a paperback, watching the garden through the window. Helen who took the city bus to the library on Tuesdays. Helen who called her friend Patricia in Columbus every Thursday and talked too long. Helen who went to bed at 9 and rose at 7 and lived a life that required very little of anyone. And then there was the version that happened between those visible moments. Every Monday morning at 8:15, I spoke on the phone with Warren Stills. Warren had been Gerald's financial advisor for 25 years and was now, as of 3 years ago, mine. He was a careful, methodical man in his early 60s who wore suspenders and kept meticulous records and had, in the early months after Gerald's death, been very gentle with me in a way I found both appreciated and unnecessary. I was not confused by grief. I had been sharpened by it. Warren and I reviewed the quarterly statements together, discussed rental income, adjusted positions in the portfolio when conditions warranted. Since taking over full management, I had made 3 adjustments to the investment strategy that Warren had initially questioned and which had, within 18 months, proven correct. He no longer questioned my instincts. Every other Wednesday, I met with a property manager named Connie Albright at a coffee shop on the far side of town, the kind of place where nobody I knew was likely to be. Connie oversaw the day-to-day management of 3 commercial buildings that Gerald and I had acquired over 20 years of patient, disciplined investment. 2 in the neighboring county, 1 on the east side of our own town. Connie had worked with Gerald for 12 years and with me for 3, and she had a quality I valued above most. She spoke to me the way a professional speaks to a peer, with full sentences and no softening of difficult information. The Barrows-Ellison Family Real Estate Trust, structured in 1989 by a careful attorney named Franklin Ward, and named in a way that would not immediately suggest Gerald or Helen Barrows to anyone not looking for it, held those 3 buildings as its primary assets, and generated approximately $160,000 in annual rental income. The trust had never appeared on any document that Michael or Renata had ever seen, because they had never thought to look for it. Why would they? Helen sold oatmeal. Helen kept to herself. Helen was the old woman in the guest room who was grateful for her nice quiet corner of their house. There was also the brokerage account. Gerald had begun investing in equities in the early 1990s, quietly and methodically, reinvesting dividends for decades without touching the principal. By the time he passed, that account held just under $2.4 million. He left it to me entirely, without condition. I continued his strategy without changing a thing, and in 3 years of careful management it had grown to $2.6 million. Michael did not know about any of it. He had grown up in a house where money was present but not discussed at the table, and he had apparently never thought to question why that was. I understand, now, that I should have told him. That the silence left a vacuum Renata filled with her own assumptions. But I had trusted my son. I believed the time for that conversation would come naturally. It came, instead, at 5:47 on a Tuesday morning in October, through the ductwork in the guest room wall. I had been watching Renata for longer than she knew. Not with hostility. I want to be clear about that. I watched her the way I had always watched the properties Gerald and I managed, with steady attention, noting what was working, noting what was not yet acting, not until I had enough information. In the year before Lily warned me about the phone call, I had already catalogued a number of things. I had noted that Renata had begun, in small ways, to test the boundaries of what the house contained. She asked about Gerald's desk, whether it was sentimental or whether it might do better in the garage, given that it was taking up space in the second bedroom she had begun calling the study. She asked if I was still using the car, and when I said yes, she said, of course, in a tone that suggested she had expected another answer. She mentioned, twice, that some of her friends' parents had moved into communities. She used the word communities, with its connotation of amenity and socialization, always communities, never facilities, and found them very enriching. Very active. Very suited to people at a certain stage. I noted all of this without comment. I noted that Michael, when Renata made these comments, looked at the table or the middle distance or his coffee cup, anywhere that was not my face. I noted that in the third year of their living here, Renata had begun including Michael's name on correspondence with the utility providers, the neighborhood association, the insurance company. As though the house were slowly transferring its allegiances. As though ownership were something you could acquire through the accumulation of small administrative acts. It was not. The house on Claremont Street was titled in my name alone. Gerald had made sure of that. He had been a careful man about the things that mattered. But paperwork is only one kind of ownership. Renata was acquiring the other kind, the daily, domestic, social ownership that comes from being the one who knows where things are and makes decisions about them. She was becoming the person the house depended on. And I was becoming, in the version of events she was constructing, the person the house was eventually going to need to manage. In the month after Lily warned me, I began to make my own quiet preparations. Nothing dramatic. I sat with Warren on our Monday call and mentioned, as a hypothetical, what would need to happen to the trust structure if I decided to make certain changes. Warren, who had known me long enough to understand that my hypotheticals were rarely hypothetical, pulled up the relevant documents without comment and walked me through them. I spoke with Clara Huang, Franklin Ward's successor, a younger attorney Warren had recommended, highly regarded for her estate planning work, and met with her twice at her office downtown, discreetly, on mornings I told no one about. Clara and I discussed a number of scenarios. She asked thoughtful questions. I gave her thorough answers. By the end of the second meeting, she had a very clear picture of what I was preparing for and what I intended to do about it. I began keeping a small notebook in the pocket of my cardigan. Not for notes, I did not need to write things down to remember them, but because the habit of having something to write with had always organized my thinking, and my thinking needed to be very organized. I was not acting yet. I was doing what I had always done in the face of a problem that had not fully declared itself, paying attention, staying ready, and waiting to see exactly what kind of problem it intended to be. I did not have to wait very long. The third Tuesday of October arrived the way October mornings in Ohio do, still and gray and slightly too cold, the kind of morning that makes you reach for a second layer without quite deciding to. I had been awake since 5. I was a light sleeper and had been since Gerald's illness. Illness teaches you to listen for things in the night. At 5:42, the third floorboard in the hallway creaked. I lay still. At 5:44, the kitchen light came on. I could see the line of it under my door. At 5:45, Renata's voice, low but clear, she's always asleep until 7. We have time. And then the conversation. I will not reproduce it word for word, because some of what I heard that morning still lands harder than I expect it to, and I am not interested in dwelling. I am interested in being accurate. Those are different things. What I heard, Michael and Renata had toured Heritage Pines Memory Care on a Saturday 3 weeks earlier, while I had believed them to be at a friend's anniversary dinner. Heritage Pines was not, as the name implied, a facility for people with memory impairment, it was a full-service senior living community. Renata made this distinction carefully, as though the precision of the category made the act of placing me there more defensible. It had good reviews, she said. A waiting list. There was a room becoming available in 6 weeks because a resident had, and here she paused briefly, passed. The cost was $4,200 per month. Renata had calculated, I heard her say this, precisely, that between my Social Security and what she described as, whatever Gerald left her, it should be manageable without any significant contribution from them. Whatever Gerald left her. I lay in the guest room with my still hands folded on the blanket and listened to my daughter-in-law price out the remainder of my life using figures she had invented, and I thought about all the things she did not know she did not know. Michael said almost nothing for most of the conversation. When he did speak, it was in the halting, careful register of a man who has already decided but has not found the right way to feel about it. He said, "She might not like it." Renata said, "She adjusts. She always adjusts." He said, "She loves this house." Renata said, "Michael, she's 72. The house is a lot for one person." He said, "We're here." Renata said, with the precision of someone closing an argument, "We can't be here forever." The implication being that I was the reason they could not be here forever. The implication being that the house, and its future, already belonged to them in the only way that mattered to Renata, in the version of events she had constructed, where I was a pleasant responsibility that had, after 3 years, become an inconvenience. She did not know about the trust. She did not know about the brokerage account. She did not know about the 3 commercial buildings, or the rental income, or the Monday morning calls with Warren, or the meetings with Connie Albright, or the 2 conversations with Clara Huang, or the notebook in my cardigan pocket, or the quiet, careful machinery that had been running beneath the surface of my quiet, cardigan-wearing days since the morning of Gerald's funeral. She did not know that the house on Claremont Street was titled in my name alone. She did not know any of it. And at 5:52 that morning, lying in the guest room in the dark, I decided it was time. I did not feel angry. I want to be clear about that. I felt the particular, clarifying calm that comes when something you have been waiting to understand finally becomes legible. It is not a pleasant feeling. It is not an unpleasant one. It is the feeling of a decision arriving, fully formed, after a long period of preparation. I waited until I heard them return upstairs. I waited until the shower in the master bathroom turned on Michael, beginning his day. Then I got up, dressed carefully in the dark, and went to the kitchen. I made coffee. I made it quietly. I sat at the kitchen table, my kitchen table, in my house, in the chair that had been mine for 31 years, and I drank it slowly, watching the gray October light come up over the garden. At 7 o'clock, I picked up my phone. At 7:05, I reached Warren Still's answering service and left a message asking him to call before 8. At 7:15, I called Clara Huang and left a second message. At 7:22, Warren called back. He sounded alert, which told me he had been expecting this call, or one like it, for some time. "Warren," I said. "We're going to make some changes." "Tell me what you need," he said. I told him. By the time Michael came downstairs at 8 o'clock, freshly showered, carrying the particular expression of a man who has made an uncomfortable decision and is hoping it will not be revisited today, I had set 6 things in motion. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my oatmeal and my paperback, exactly as I was every morning. "Good morning, Mom," he said. "Good morning, Michael," I said. "There's coffee." He poured himself a cup and stood at the counter, and I could feel him deciding whether to say something. He decided against it. He kissed my forehead on his way out, the way he had kissed it every morning for 4 years, with the uncomplicated affection of a man who believed everything was going to resolve itself without requiring him to do anything difficult. I turned a page of my book. Renata came down at 8:30 in her work clothes, professional and precise. She made her smoothie, answered 2 emails on her phone, and left at 8:42, clicking the front door shut behind her with the efficiency of someone who considers their time valuable. I watched the garden. At 9 o'clock, I called Lily. It was early for her on a weekday, but she picked up on the second ring. "Grandma Hell," she said, and from the way she said it, I knew she had been waiting. "I need you to listen to me carefully," I said. "And I need you to say nothing to your father until I tell you it's time." "Okay," she said. "No questions. Just okay." "Something happened this morning," I said. "And I want you to know that everything is going to be fine. But things are going to change, and I need you to trust me for a little while longer." There was a pause, and then Lily said the thing that made my chest tighten in the way only she ever managed. "Grandma Hell. Did they pick a home?" I was quiet for a moment. "They've been looking," I said. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," I said. "But you know what your grandfather always said. She had heard it enough times to know it by heart. She said it the way Gerald used to say it, in the voice she had somehow inherited without meaning to. The best time to move is before anyone knows you're leaving. That's right, I said. I could hear her sitting up straighter, wherever she was, the way she did when something shifted into focus. What do you need me to do? She asked. Not yet, I told her. But soon. I'll call you when it's time. After I hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap for a moment, in the quiet of the kitchen, in the house on Claremont Street that had been mine for 31 years and that, by certain arrangements already in motion since before breakfast, was about to become very clearly mine again. The oatmeal had gone cold. I went to make a second cup of coffee. It was going to be a full week. The first thing I did that week was nothing. I want to be precise about that, because nothing is often misunderstood as an action. It is not. Nothing, done deliberately, by someone who knows exactly what she is doing, is one of the most active choices available. I went about my days on Claremont Street the way I always had, the oatmeal, the paperback, the Tuesday library run, the Thursday call with Patricia. I said good morning to Renata with the same warmth I had always used. I asked Michael about his projects at work. I kept the house the way I had always kept it, clean, orderly, exactly the way I liked it. The difference was that now I was watching with different eyes. I was watching the way a woman watches a situation she has already decided to leave. Warren Stills had asked me, on that first morning phone call, what the timeline was. I told him I needed 2 weeks to be certain, and 1 more to act. He said he would be ready. Warren had worked with Gerald and me long enough to understand that my timelines were not suggestions. Clara Huang called back at 10 that same morning. I sat in the garden to take the call, the ductwork worked in both directions, and habits of caution had served me well for 50 years. Clara was brisk and organized in the way I had always appreciated. She had been expecting something like this since our second meeting. She confirmed that everything we had discussed was possible within the time frame I described. She would need certain documents from me, a signed authorization, and 1 in-person meeting. I told her I would be at her office on Thursday at 2 o'clock. On Thursday, I had an appointment at the library. No one would think to question it. Mrs. Barrows, Clara said before we hung up, with something careful in her voice, are you certain about the full scope of what we discussed? I'm certain, I said. Including the house? Including the house, I said. That's the one I'm most certain about. On Wednesday evening, Renata mentioned Heritage Pines. She did it indirectly, which was her preferred method when she was uncertain of her reception. She approached difficult subjects the way someone approaches a dog they are not sure about, with a performance of casualness designed to suggest the subject was not important to her. She was making pasta. Michael was setting the table. I was sitting at the island with a cup of tea, which was where I sat in the evenings when I wanted to observe the kitchen without appearing to. I was talking to my colleague Sandra today, Renata said. Her mother is at a place called Willowbrook. She says the community is wonderful. Very active. Book clubs, yoga classes, that kind of thing. I waited. It made me think, she said, her back still to me, stirring, that we should probably have a conversation soon about long-term planning. Just as a family. Just to make sure everyone's needs are being met. The phrase everyone's needs was particularly careful. It implied I had needs that were perhaps not being met, a gentle suggestion that my current situation was the problem rather than their preferred solution. Michael kept setting plates. He did not look at me. That sounds like a good idea, I said pleasantly. I've actually been doing some thinking about the future myself. Renata turned slightly. Oh. I looked at my tea. Gerald always said planning was the only form of optimism worth practicing. Renata smiled, that practiced, surface smile. Wise man. He was, I said. Among other things. I did not say anything else. Neither did she. Michael put the plates on the table and we ate dinner and talked about the weather forecast and a story on the news, and the word Heritage Pines was not spoken, but it sat at the table with us like an uninvited guest. After dinner, while they watched television in the front room, I went to the guest room and sat at the small writing desk by the window. I opened the cardigan pocket and took out the notebook. I did not write anything. I sat with it in my hands and I thought about Gerald, the way he always appeared in my thoughts when I was making a large decision, not with sentimentality, but with clarity. He had a gift for cutting through noise. I could hear him, in the particular way the dead speak to us when we know them well enough. You already know what to do, Helen. You've always known what to do. You're just deciding when. Thursday at 2 o'clock, I was in Clara Huang's office signing 3 documents. I was back at the library by 4:15 with 2 new novels checked out. No one knew I had been anywhere but there. On Friday morning, Lily arrived for the weekend. She came in the way teenagers arrive, loudly, dropping her bag in the hall, needing to eat immediately, filling every room she entered with a specific kind of energy that reminded me, every time, of how quiet the house was when she was not in it. She hugged Michael, tolerated Renata's efficient cheek kiss, and then came to find me in the kitchen where I was slicing apples. She did not say anything. She just stood beside me and started handing me the slices to arrange. After a moment she said, quietly, "Things feel different." "They are," I said. "But not yet visibly." "Are you okay?" "I am considerably better than okay," I said. She looked at me sideways. She had Gerald's eyes, the particular shade of brown that conveyed everything without effort. "Grandma hell," she said. "What did you do?" "What needed to be done," I said. "What I should have done months ago, probably. But I needed to be certain first. I needed to know what I was actually dealing with. And now you know." "Now I know." She was quiet for another moment, handing me apple slices. "Then, is there anything I need to do before it happens?" "Just one thing," I said. "But not yet. I'll tell you Sunday night." She nodded. She did not press me. That was something I had always loved about Lily. She understood that trust sometimes looks like patience. The weekend passed in the ordinary way of weekends on Claremont Street. Michael and Renata had dinner with friends on Saturday evening, leaving Lily and me alone in the house, which was the best kind of evening I knew. We ordered Thai food, something Renata considered excessively pungent and therefore never allowed, and sat at the kitchen table in our socks eating noodles and talking the way we talked when no one was managing us. She told me about school, about a history teacher she admired, about a boy in her chemistry class who was, she said carefully, probably very nice when he was not being an idiot. I told her about the house on Claremont Street when it was new, when Gerald and I had moved in and the kitchen had avocado green appliances and the garden was nothing but mud. "What was he like?" she asked. "Grandpa Gerald." "Stubborn," I said. "Funny." He thought he was funnier than he was, which is the particular delusion of men who are actually quite funny. He never raised his voice in anger. He had a gift for being right without making you feel wrong. I looked at my noodles. "He would have liked you enormously." "I know," she said simply, and she was right, she did know it, in the way people know things that are simply true. After dinner she said, "Tell me about it. The real version. What Gerald actually built." So I told her. I told her about the properties, the trust, the brokerage account. I told her about Warren Stills and Connie Albright and the Monday calls and the Wednesday meetings. I told her about the accounting I had done with my mother as a child and the way that language had never left me. I told her that the house was mine and had always been mine, and that the life Renata had constructed in her mind, the convenient, manageable, appropriately sized life of widow Helen Barrows, was a fiction built on incomplete information. Lily listened to all of it with the same still attention she gave everything important. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Does Dad know any of this?" she said. "He knows some of it. He knew your grandfather invested. He did not follow the details, and I did not press them on him, and that was a failure of honesty on my part that I am now correcting." "Why didn't you tell him before?" It was a fair question. I had asked myself the same one, in the guest room, in the dark, more than once since October's 3rd Tuesday. "Because I thought it would not be necessary," I said. I thought family meant something different than it turned out to mean. Lily looked at me steadily. It still means something. It does, I agreed. But meaning something and being trustworthy are different qualities. And I have spent 4 years confusing them. She nodded slowly, the way she did when she was absorbing something and storing it. Then she said, quietly, what's going to happen to Renata? Nothing I have not earned, I said. And nothing more than is warranted. Sunday evening I called Lily into the guest room and told her the one thing I needed from her. It was simple. It required no deception, no performance, no action she would be uncomfortable with. She would simply need to be present, in the house, on the following Thursday evening. She would need to have no plans that could not be changed. And she would need to not tell her father why she wanted to stay an extra night. She looked at me for a moment, working through it. Can I ask one question? Of course. Is Dad going to be okay? I thought about that carefully. Michael, his easy warmth, his insufficient stubbornness, the way he had said she might not like it in the dark kitchen and then let the conversation move on without him. Your father is going to be fine, I said. He is going to have a difficult few weeks and then he is going to be fine. I am not interested in punishing your father. He is not the person who needs to learn something. Lily considered this. And Renata? Renata, I said, needs to learn several things. The nature of what Gerald and I built together. The difference between accommodation and relinquishment. And the particular thing that Gerald understood better than almost anyone I have known. What's that? I smiled. That quiet people are only quiet, I said. They are not gone. If this story has found you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story from Linda's Life Diaries. The best ones are still coming, and the people who watch to the end are exactly the ones who need to hear them. The following week moved differently than the weeks before it. I felt it in my body, the specific weight of resolution, the way it settles into the shoulders and steadies the hands. I had felt it before, twice, once when Gerald and I decided to purchase the first commercial building, against the advice of everyone who knew us, and once on the morning of Gerald's funeral when I understood that the life ahead of me was entirely my own to construct. Both times, the weight had settled the same way. Not lightness, certainty. They feel similar, but they are not the same. Monday morning, Warren and I spoke for an hour and 15 minutes. He walked me through the final steps of what we had set in motion the previous week. He had a colleague in estate law he trusted, someone named Ellis Parrish who handled certain kinds of transfers quickly and without fanfare. He would make the introduction if I wanted. I said yes. Tuesday, the library. I was not thinking about books. Wednesday, Connie Albright and I met at the coffee shop. I told her that certain changes were coming in the ownership structure, nothing that affected the day-to-day management of the properties, nothing she needed to act on yet, but she should know. Connie listened the way she always listened, without performing surprise, and said, Gerald always said you were the architect of the whole thing. Just never said it out loud. Gerald was private, I said. He was smart is what he was. She folded her hands around her coffee cup. Do you need anything from me? Keep running things the way you have been, I said. And if anyone calls inquiring about the properties in the next few weeks, you can tell them the ownership is in transition and all inquiries should go through Clara Huang. Connie nodded. Understood. Thursday I was in Clara's office at 2 o'clock again. We reviewed the documents she had prepared. I signed where I needed to sign. Clara asked if I was sure about the timing. I told her the timing was the whole point. She handed me a sealed envelope that I put in my coat pocket, and we shook hands across her desk, and I was at the library by 4:15 with 3 books I would not have time to read this week. That evening, at dinner, Renata mentioned that she had spoken to someone at Heritage Pines. This time she did not cloak it in the story of a colleague's mother. This time she said it directly, with the confidence of someone who has decided the conversation is overdue. I spoke to an intake coordinator, she said. Just to understand the process. There's a room becoming available November 15th, and she said if we wanted to hold it we'd need to confirm by the end of the month. She looked at me. Michael looked at the table. I see, I said. I thought we might want to discuss it as a family this weekend, Renata said. Sit down together, look at some information, talk through the options. That sounds fine, I said. I'll be here Friday evening. Michael looked up, briefly, and I held his eyes for a moment. I had not, I realized, really looked at him in several weeks, not in the way I was looking now, which was the way his father had looked at people when he needed them to pay attention. Something shifted in Michael's expression. A flicker of something, not quite recognition, not quite alarm, but something in between. Mom, he said. Are you all right? I'm quite well, I said. Thank you for asking. Lily arrived Thursday evening instead of Friday morning. She had told Michael she had a half day of school, which was true. She came directly from the bus, dropped her bag in the hallway the usual way, ate the plate I had kept warm for her, and sat at the kitchen table with me after Michael and Renata had gone upstairs. We did not talk much. We did the thing that families who trust each other sometimes do in moments of consequence. We sat together in the kitchen, with the radio on low, and we let the evening pass. At 10 o'clock I said goodnight and went to the guest room. I did not sleep. I lay in the dark with the same still hands and waited for morning. Friday dawned clear and cold, the kind of October morning that smells like wood smoke and approaching change. I was up at 5. Not because of the floorboards this time. Because today was the day, and I had been ready for it for longer than anyone knew. I dressed carefully. Not dramatically, I was not performing anything, not for my own sake, not for anyone else's. I put on the dark gray blazer Gerald had always said made me look like someone who knew what she was doing. I put on the pearl earrings his mother had left me. I put on good shoes. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. At 6:15, before the house was fully awake, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Warren Stills, to confirm that everything was in place. It was. The second was to Connie Albright, to tell her the timeline had moved. She already knew what to do. At 6:45, Michael came downstairs. He stopped in the kitchen doorway when he saw me sitting at the table, dressed and composed, with a cup of coffee in front of me and the sealed envelope from Clara Huang beside it. Mom, he said. He was still in his work clothes from having just dressed, shirt untucked, tie not yet on. He looked young in the way men look young before the day has fully arranged them. You're up early. Sit down, Michael, I said. Not harshly. Not softly. The way you say something when you mean it the way it sounds. He sat. I looked at my son, at his hands on the table, his father's hands, the same breadth across the palm, and I felt the complicated love of a parent who understands both what a child is and what they have failed to be, and loves them through both things, steadily, without condition, and without confusion about which is which. I need to tell you some things, I said. And I need you to listen. Not to respond, not to explain, not to apologize, at least not yet. Just to listen. He nodded. He was already pale. Some of what I tell you is going to surprise you, I said. And some of what I tell you is not going to be comfortable. But all of it is the truth, and all of it is something you deserve to know. I should have told you more of it sooner. I did not, and that is my responsibility. But what happened as a result of that silence is a responsibility we now share. He said nothing. His hands were very still on the table. Your father built a careful life, I said. You know some of it. You don't know most of it. And what I am going to tell you this morning is the part you don't know, because the part you don't know is what has to change. I told him about the trust. I told him about the brokerage account. I told him about the 3 commercial buildings, the rental income, Connie Albright, the Monday calls with Warren, the meetings with Clara Huang that had happened not last week but over the course of many months. I did not tell it to him the way someone confesses. I was not confessing. I told it to him the way I had always presented financial information, clearly, in order, with the relevant numbers, without decoration. I watched his face change as I spoke. Not once, not dramatically, it changed the way a shoreline changes under a slow tide, small and continuous and irreversible. The surprise came first, then the disorientation, then something that looked, around the edges, like a rearrangement of his entire understanding of the past 3 years. When I finished, he did not speak for almost a full minute. Then he said, "Mom. Why didn't you?" "I'm telling you now," I said. "That's what matters." "But Renata thought." "I know what Renata thought," I said. "That is part of what I need to discuss with you." He looked at the envelope on the table. He had been looking at it the whole time in the way people look at something they know is important and have not yet dared to ask about. "What is that?" he said. "That," I said, "is a letter from my attorney. And it explains the changes I am making." I looked at him steadily. "I want to tell you what those changes are before you read it. Because you are my son, and because you deserve to hear it from me and not from a piece of paper." He waited. "I am moving out of the guest room," I said. "I am not moving to Heritage Pines or Willowbrook or any other facility you and Renata have been researching. I am moving to the apartment on the 4th floor of the Marsden building, which is one of the properties your father and I own. I am moving there on the 1st of November. I have already arranged it with Connie." Michael's face went through something I did not have a name for. His mouth opened and closed once. "The Marsden building," he said. We own that?" "Your father and I own it," I said. "Through the trust. Which means I own it." He sat back in his chair. He looked like a man who had just been handed a map for a city he thought he knew and found that every street was in a different place. "The house on Claremont Street," I said, "remains in my name. It will remain in my name. I am not giving you the house, Michael. I want to be very clear about that. You and Renata are welcome to continue living here, on a lease, at market rate, as tenants. Clara has prepared the relevant paperwork. It is in the envelope. Or you may choose to make other arrangements. I will not pressure either outcome." The silence that followed was the kind that has texture. I could hear the refrigerator. I could hear the morning birds beginning outside the kitchen window. "You're charging us rent," Michael said. Not with anger, with the bewildered neutrality of someone processing something too large for his current architecture. "I am formalizing what should have been formal from the beginning," I said. "When I invited you to move in 3 years ago, I thought I was extending family. I was not wrong to think that. But what evolved was not family. It was something else." He looked at the table. "Mom. I heard you on Tuesday morning," I said. The words landed. I watched them land. Michael looked up. His face had changed again, the disorientation was gone and in its place was something plainer and worse. He knew exactly what I meant, and he could not pretend otherwise, and the not pretending cost him something that showed. "We were going to talk to you," he said. "I know you were," I said. "Renata said the end of the month." He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them they were red around the edges. "I should have talked to you sooner." "I should have," he stopped. "She presented it as taking care of you." "I think she believed that." "I think she may have," I said. "I don't think Renata is a cruel person, Michael. I think she is a person who makes calculations based on incomplete information, and who has never quite understood that the women in her life have interior lives that don't match their visible ones." I paused. That is a limitation, not an evil. But its consequences are the same either way. He was quiet. Outside, the birds continued. The kitchen was very still. "What do you want me to do?" he said at last. The question of a man who is, finally, asking the right person. "I want you to read the envelope," I said. "I want you to think carefully about what it means. I want you to talk to Renata today, before this evening, before whatever conversation she has planned about Heritage Pines. And I want you to tell her the truth. All of it. Because she has been operating in a world that does not exist, and she deserves to know the actual one." He looked at the envelope again. "She's going to be." "I know," I said. I expect so. But that is your conversation to have, and your marriage to navigate. I will not interfere in it, and I am not trying to damage it. I am simply refusing to disappear into it. Michael picked up the envelope. He held it for a moment without opening it. Mom, he said. His voice had changed, lower, slower, the voice he used when something mattered. Are you really okay? In all of this? I considered the question genuinely. Was I okay? I thought about the guest room, the ductwork, the gray October morning, the 2 phone calls before 6:15, the pearl earrings, the good shoes. I said. I am considerably better than I have been in several years. Are you angry at me? I am disappointed, I said, honestly. And I am hopeful. Both of those are forms of love, Michael. Anger would be easier, but I don't think either of us is well served by it. He nodded. He was holding the envelope with both hands, the way his father used to hold important documents. Lily's here, he said. She is. Does she know? She knows enough, I said. She has known enough for longer than you have. You might want to think about that. He flinched, a small, honest flinch. She's 16, he said. She is, I agreed. And in 16 years she has managed to see what 4 years did not show you. I love you, Michael. But that's something worth sitting with. I picked up my coffee cup. I stood up. I smoothed the front of the gray blazer. I'm going to call Connie and confirm a few details about the apartment, I said. You should open that envelope. And then I think you should probably call Renata before she gets too deep into her day. I left him at the kitchen table. I went to the garden, where the morning was cold and clear and absolutely mine, and I stood in it for a little while, feeling the October air on my face, and I thought about Gerald, the way I thought about him when things had resolved themselves into their correct shape, not with grief, but with something that sat closer to gratitude. He would have handled it differently, probably. He would have been more direct, earlier. He would have had the conversation in year 1 that I had delayed until year 4. But he also would have looked at what I had set in motion this morning, at the careful, methodical precision of it, and he would have put his arm around my shoulders and said, there she is. From inside the house I heard the sound of the envelope opening. I turned my face into the sun and waited. Renata came home at 5:47. I know the exact time because I was in the kitchen starting dinner when I heard her key in the lock, and I had been watching the clock the way you watch a clock when something is coming, not with dread, not with anticipation, but with the particular, measured attention of someone who wants to be present for what happens next. Michael had called her at 9:15 that morning. I knew this because I had been in the garden, and the kitchen window was old and did not seal as tightly as Renata believed, and I had heard enough of his voice, low, careful, not rushed, to know he was saying something important. I did not listen. I did not need to. I had said what needed to be said, and the rest was theirs to navigate. Lily had found me in the garden at 10 o'clock with 2 cups of tea and a look on her face that was trying very hard to be neutral. Dad looks like he's been hit by something, she said. He has been, I said. Not by me. By information. Is that different? It is, I said. I know it doesn't always feel like it. But yes. She handed me the tea and we sat on the garden bench in the cold morning, and she did not ask me anything else, and I did not offer anything else, and the morning moved forward the way mornings do when you have done what needed doing and there is nothing left but to let the rest unfold. Michael had spent most of the day in the study, the second bedroom Renata had renamed, the one with Gerald's desk that she had tried to relocate to the garage. I did not disturb him. Lily did once, briefly. I heard her knock, heard the door open, heard her say something quiet that I could not make out and did not try to. The door closed again after a few minutes. She came back downstairs without comment, sat across from me at the kitchen table, and opened her homework. We did not speak about any of it. This is one of the things I have always loved most about Lily. She understands that presence is its own form of care, and that speaking into important silences often ruins them. Renata's key in the lock. She came through the door the way she always came through the door after work, sufficiently, with purpose, already in the motion of the next thing. She set her bag on the bench in the entry hall. She took off her coat. She moved toward the kitchen and stopped in the doorway when she saw me at the stove and Lily at the table, both of us exactly where we usually were. Something about that stopped her. I think she had been expecting, in the 3 feet between the front door and the kitchen, that the house would feel different. That the ground would have already shifted visibly. She had spoken to Michael, I could see it in the set of her jaw, the particular precision with which she was holding herself. She knew something had happened. She did not yet know the scale of it. "Helen," she said. My name, in her mouth, with its usual neutral warmth. "Renata," I said. "Dinner is about 40 minutes. There's wine open if you want some." She looked at Lily. Lily looked at her textbook. "Is Michael upstairs?" Renata said. "In the study," I said. She went upstairs. Lily looked up from her homework. She did not say anything. She looked back down. Dinner was set for 6:30. At 6:25, Michael came downstairs. He looked like a man who had spent the day being rearranged from the inside, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep, with a stillness about him that was new. He sat at the table and looked at the place settings and the water glasses and the salad I had made, and he said, "Can I help with anything?" "You can bring the bread," I said. He got up and brought the bread. Renata came downstairs at 6:30 precisely, the way she always did. Punctuality was a form of control she exercised with great consistency. She sat at her usual chair. She had changed out of her work clothes and into something casual but composed. Her face was the face she wore when she had made a decision about how to handle something and had not yet executed it. I put the pasta on the table. I sat down. Lily sat down. We began to serve ourselves the way families serve themselves, passing things, asking for things, the small transactional courtesies of the shared table. For perhaps 10 minutes we ate in the most ordinary way. The pasta was good. The bread was good. Michael complimented both. Lily talked about something her history teacher had said, and I asked a question, and she answered it, and for a moment the table felt the way tables should feel, occupied by people who belong in the same room. Then Renata set down her fork. "Helen," she said. "Michael told me some things today that I want to talk about." I looked at her calmly. "All right." "He told me about the properties. The trust." She paused. "The account." "Yes," I said. "He told me, he showed me the letter from your attorney." Another pause, carefully controlled. "About the house." "Yes," I said again. Renata looked at her plate for a moment, then back at me. She was working through something, visibly. Renata was not a woman who wore her interior life plainly, but she was also not accustomed to situations she could not navigate, and this one had removed several of the navigational tools she typically relied on. "Why didn't you tell us?" she said. "About any of it." "Which part would you have liked to know?" I said. It was not a combative question. I meant it genuinely. "All of it," she said. "I see," I said. "And would it have changed how you treated me?" The question landed. Renata's composure held. She was too skilled at composure for it not to, but something shifted behind it. Something that told me the question had reached the part she was least comfortable with, which was the honest answer. "I don't think I've treated you badly," she said. "No," I said. "Not badly. You treated me the way you understood me, and your understanding was built on what you chose to see." I looked at her steadily. "You saw an old woman in a guest room. A manageable situation. A thing to be organized into its correct place." "That's not," she began. "Heritage Pines," I said. The name sat on the table like something dropped from a height. Renata's jaw tightened fractionally. "We were going to talk to you about it." "I know. At the end of the month. There was a room becoming available November 15th. I held her gaze. "Because a resident had passed." The silence stretched. Michael was looking at the table. Lily was looking at me. I heard you planning it, I said. Tuesday morning, before 6 o'clock, in the kitchen, through the ductwork in the guest room wall. The ductwork that has excellent acoustics, as it turns out. Renata's composure broke slightly, not dramatically, not with any visible collapse, but in the way a precisely held face breaks when it is confronted with something it cannot reshape. Her eyes went to Michael. He did not look up. We were trying to help, she said. I believe you thought you were, I said. I think the helping and the other thing, the convenience of it, the solving of a problem, the freeing of a room, the clarification of a future, I think those two intentions had become very comfortable neighbors in your mind and you had stopped distinguishing between them. She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, with less performance in it, the voice of someone having an actual conversation rather than managing one. You had all of this, she said. All this time. And you never said anything. No, I said. I didn't. Why? I thought about this, the real answer, not the convenient one. Because I was still grieving, I said. Because I was tired and I let people make decisions around me that I should have made myself. Because I thought being in my own home, with my son, was a form of safety. And because I told myself that if the people I lived with were going to reveal who they would do it on their own terms, without me forcing it. I was right about that last part. I was wrong about the others. Renata looked at the pasta cooling on her plate. Then she looked at me. You're really moving out, she said. On the 1st of November, I said. The Marsden building, 4th floor. It has a garden view and better ductwork. Something happened at the corner of Renata's mouth, something that was not quite a smile and was not one. I had not expected that. It told me something I had been uncertain of, that there was a person inside the performance, and that the person was capable of recognizing the shape of her own situation. The lease terms are in the envelope, I said. They are fair. Market rate for Claremont Street, which has appreciated considerably since 1991. You have 30 days to decide whether you want to stay on those terms or make other arrangements. I am not evicting you. I am reorganizing. And if we stay, Michael said. He had looked up finally. His voice was rough around the edges. What does that look like? It looks like a normal tenancy, I said. With the difference that I will not be living in the guest room, and you will be living in my house on honest terms rather than assumed ones. Whether that is better or worse depends on what you value. He nodded slowly. He was chewing on something, not the bread. The thing that had been chewing on him all day, that I had put there with the envelope, that Lily had apparently helped him sit with through the closed study door. I want to say something, he said. He looked at me directly, the way he had not looked at me in months, perhaps longer. I want to say that I knew something was wrong and I let it be wrong. I told myself it was easier not to press things. I let Renata lead because it felt like taking care of things, and it was easier than deciding what I actually thought. He stopped. His hands were flat on the table. That's not good enough. I know that. No, I said. It isn't. I'm sorry, Mom. I looked at my son, at the hands on the table, at the face that had aged since breakfast, at the man he was underneath, the man he had been performing for 4 years. He was not a bad person. He was a person who had done a bad thing in the particular way of people who are not bad, slowly, through omission, through the lazy comfort of letting someone else carry the weight of decision. I know you are, I said. And I believe you. But sorry is the beginning of a thing, not the end of one. What happens after sorry is what I'll be watching. He nodded. He understood. Gerald's son, after all. Lily had been very still through all of this. Now she looked at me across the table, and in her eyes was something I recognized, not relief exactly, but the particular exhale of someone who has been holding a breath for a long time and has finally been given permission to let it go. She picked up her fork. The pasta's getting cold, she said. And somehow, in that exact moment, the whole table breathed. The 1st of November arrived cold and clear, with a sky the color of good news. I had packed in a way that would have made Gerald smile, methodically, without sentiment, keeping what was useful and releasing what was not. The furniture in the guest room had always been mine, brought from the old house before Michael and Renata moved in, and most of it came with me. The rest I left where it was, because leaving it was easier than moving it and keeping it was not worth the effort. The apartment in the Marsden building was on the 4th floor and faced west, which meant afternoon light in the sitting room and the particular orange warmth of October sunsets over the rooftops. Connie had overseen the maintenance herself, and the apartment was in perfect condition: hardwood floors, good radiators, a kitchen with a window over the sink. Small by the standards of Claremont Street, correct by the standards of a woman who no longer needed to maintain anyone else's idea of comfort. I stood in the kitchen of the Marsden apartment on the morning of November 1st, with my coffee and my cardigan and the notebook in my pocket, and I looked out the window at the city below, and I felt the specific satisfaction of a woman who is standing in a place she owns and knows she owns it. Lily helped me move on Saturday morning, her idea, carried out with her characteristic efficiency. She commandeered Michael's station wagon, drove 3 loads, arranged the furniture with the decisive confidence of someone who had strong opinions about where things should go and was right about most of them. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the apartment was livable. By 4, it was mine. Michael came on the 2nd load. He carried boxes without speaking much, which was how Michael processed things, through his hands, through motion. He set down a box of Gerald's books in the sitting room and stood looking at them for a moment. "Dad's," he said. "He wanted them kept together," I said. Michael nodded. He did not say anything else. He picked up the car keys from the counter and looked at me for a moment with an expression that had something new in it, a seriousness, an attention, the expression of a man who is beginning to understand something he had been too comfortable to see before. "Renata and I talked for most of last night," he said. "I imagine you did," I said. He stopped. "She's not who I thought she was, in some ways. And in some ways she's more than I gave her credit for." He looked at the box of books. "She said something last night that surprised me. She said, I was so busy planning for what she might cost us that I never thought about what she was worth." I was quiet for a moment. "She said that herself?" I asked. "She said it herself." I considered Renata, the calculation, the composure, the specific blindness that had come from looking at a person and seeing only what was convenient to see. And now, apparently, the moment of seeing clearly. I did not know if it would hold. I did not know if it was the beginning of something or simply the shock of information producing a temporary honesty. Time would show me. "She's going to have to demonstrate that," I said. "I know," he said. "I told her so." I looked at my son. "You told her that?" "I told her a number of things last night," he said, with the faint, new steadiness of a man who has recently discovered what it feels like to say what he actually means. "Some of them were overdue." I reached up and put my hand on his cheek, the way I had done when he was a child, the specific gesture of a mother who is looking at her son and finding him, unexpectedly, in the right place. "Good," I said. He drove back for the 3rd load. I stood at the window and watched him go. Lily stayed until Sunday evening. We ate takeout on moving boxes, which she said was the only correct way to eat in a new apartment, and we watched the city go dark through the west window, and she told me she had been thinking about what I had said about Gerald, the way he was right without making you feel wrong. "I want to be like that," she said. "You already are," I said. "More than you know." She was quiet for a moment, pulling apart the last of the spring rolls. "Is it going to be weird? Not living with Dad anymore?" "No," I said honestly. "It's going to be correct. There's a difference." "Do you think they'll stay? In the house?" "I think they'll sign the lease," I said. "Renata is practical about real estate. The terms are fair and the location is good. Whether they stay after the 1st year depends on whether Michael manages to keep hold of the version of himself he found this week." Lily considered this. "He's trying," she said. "He is," I agreed. "I'll give him credit for that." She leaned against the window, looking out at the city lights. "Grandma hell," she said. What do you think Grandpa Gerald would say about all of it? I thought about Gerald, his voice in my thoughts, the particular way he appeared when I needed precision. I thought about the house, and the trust, and the Monday calls with Warren, and the morning I lay in the dark and listened through the ductwork and made my decision. I thought about the gray blazer and the pearl earrings and the envelope on the kitchen table and Michael's hands, flat and still, while he listened to the things he should have known. I think he would say, I told her, that I waited too long. She looked at me. And then he would say, I continued, that I did it right in the end, which is the only part that stays. She smiled, the real one, the one that was all her own. I think so, too, she said. I handed her the last spring roll. Outside, the city continued its business, lights coming on in windows, the sound of the street below, the particular low hum of a city at evening that sounds like everything happening at once. My apartment. My window. My view of my building's garden 4 floors below, where nothing was planted yet but something would be in the spring. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The weeks after the move settled into a new shape, the way weeks do when a major change has been made and the world has not ended but simply reconfigured. Renata and Michael signed the lease at the end of November. Renata sent me a text, not an email, not a call, but a text, which was somehow more honest than either would have been. The terms are fair. We're staying. I want to do better. I know that's on me to show, not say. I read it twice and replied, I know. 2 words. But she knew how to read them. Michael called every Sunday. Not the perfunctory calls of the previous years, the 5-minute check-ins that served their function and nothing else, but real calls, the kind with pauses in them, the kind where you are talking to a person rather than completing a task. He asked about the apartment. He asked about Warren's Monday calls. He asked, tentatively, about the properties, not with calculation, but with genuine curiosity, as though understanding his father's work was a way of understanding something about his father he had missed. I answered his questions. All of them. I cooked dinner for both of them on the 2nd Thursday of December, in my apartment, in my kitchen with the window over the sink. Renata brought wine. She stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment when she first arrived and looked at the apartment, looked at it the way she had looked at the fruit stand on her first visit to the mall, calculating the value of everything she saw. But this time I watched the calculation change as it moved through her. This was not a place she would be reorganizing. This was a place that was already exactly what it was supposed to be, and she could see that, and she was smart enough to let herself see it. This is lovely, she said. And she meant it, the real version, the one that did not require anything from her except honesty. Thank you, I said. I think so, too. Lily came for the last weekend before Christmas. She brought her chemistry textbook and a scented candle she said smelled like something fancy but not pretentious, and installed it on the windowsill in the sitting room as though it were the final necessary thing. She was probably right. She was usually right. On the Saturday evening, we sat in the sitting room with the candle lit and the city going dark outside, and she said, without preamble, I've been thinking about law school. I looked at her over my coffee cup. Have you? Clara Huang went to Ohio State, she said. I looked it up. She's been practicing for 12 years. She started her own firm at 34. She did, I said. I thought I wanted to do something with history, Lily said. But I think what I actually want is to do what you do. The planning. The protecting things. Making sure people have what they're supposed to have. I was quiet for a moment, feeling the particular weight of something passing forward, the way a language passes, or a habit of precision, or the understanding that the women who know their own worth are the ones who make the rules instead of living by someone else's. Estate law is a good field, I said. Clara Huang seems happy in it. She does, I said. She's also excellent at it. Lily looked at the candle. I want to be the kind of person who can do what you did, she said. See everything clearly and not panic. Know what to do. You already are, I said. You have been since you were 9 years old and told your father his argument about curfew had a logical flaw. She laughed, surprised into it, which was the best kind. He never fixed the flaw, she said. No, I said. But you found it. That's the important part. We sat in the candlelight in my apartment in my building in the city I had lived in for 50 years, and the winter settled around us the way winter settles when you are somewhere you are supposed to be, and I felt, in that room, the specific satisfaction of a life that was entirely legible to itself. Gerald used to say that the best thing you could do for the people you loved was to show them what was possible. Not tell them. Show them. Let them see what someone looks like who knows what she has and will not be talked out of it. I thought about Lily choosing law school. I thought about Michael finding his voice across a dinner table. I thought about Renata sending 2 honest words in a text message instead of a managed paragraph. I thought about Clara Huang across the desk with documents that changed everything, and Warren on the phone at 6:15 in the morning, and Connie Albright saying Gerald always called you the architect. I thought about the guest room I had accepted when I should have stayed in the master bedroom. I thought about the 3 years of accommodation that had trained everyone around me to expect the next one. I thought about the ductwork and the cold October morning and the decision that had arrived fully formed after a long, quiet preparation. I thought about the house on Claremont Street, mine since 1991, mine still. I thought about Gerald's books in their box in the sitting room, kept together the way he wanted them, in an apartment he never saw, in a building he helped me buy, holding the shape of everything he taught me. I was not the woman they had planned around. I had never been. I was the woman who built the thing they were planning around, and I had simply waited long enough for everyone, including, perhaps, myself, to understand the difference. People ask me, sometimes, what I would tell a woman in that situation. A woman in the guest room, a woman who has been slowly reorganized out of her own life by people who mean well and understand nothing. A woman who hears her name spoken in a planning conversation and recognizes, with a clarity that feels both sudden and like something she has known for years, that the time has come. I would tell her this. You are not obligated to perform smallness for the comfort of people who have confused your patience with your limits. Everything you have built, the accounts, the properties, the accumulated precision of a life lived carefully, is yours. Not because of a document, though the document matters. Because you built it. Because you understood things other people did not bother to understand. Because you sat at a small desk behind a hardware store counter when you were 9 years old learning a language that would protect you 50 years later. The silence you have chosen is not weakness. But there is a point at which it becomes a gift to the wrong people. You will know when that point arrives. You are already listening for it. You have been listening for it longer than you realize. When it comes, and it will come, through ductwork or an overheard phone call or a letter that arrives when you are least expecting it, do not panic. Do not perform. Do not announce. Make your coffee. Call your attorney. Put on your good shoes. And then, when you are ready, and you will be ready, because you have always been ready, let them find out who you are. They will be surprised. You will not be. That is the whole point. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. The people who finish the whole story are the ones who understand it, and the ones who share it. If this one moved you, the next video on your screen is waiting to do the same. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come back. There's always another woman the world underestimated. And we tell those stories here.